Hello everyone, my name is Elvis and welcome to my very first video tutorial. In this tutorial, I will be turning this mockup design into a web page using HTML, CSS and a little bit of JavaScript. Also, I will assume you know the very basics of HTML and CSS. To follow along in this tutorial, you can download all the assets and the final project from my GitHub repository or from the front-end mentor websites. So here in Visual Studio, I have a readme.md file which contains the style guide for this project, the index.html file with a simple HTML file boilerplate, a style.css file, and the app.js file. Also, all images used in this project are in the images folder and the fonts are in the fonts folder. Please don't forget to share your thoughts on this video in the comment section. So let's get started. Inside the body tag, let's add a div element with a class attribute of wrapper. The reason why I'm adding this will be explained when styling the page. So let's start creating the top section of the web page. Inside the div element, let's add the header tag with a class attribute of header. Inside, let's add the image tag to display the logo. The source attribute will point to /images/logo.svg. The alt attribute will be a text of logo and add a class attribute of logo to the image tag. Adding a text value to the alt attribute is always a good practice and makes it easy for screen reader software and search engines. So inside the nav tag, let's add our anchor tags for home, popular, trending, and category. We can leave the href attributes to be empty. For the menu icon visible on the mobile design, let's add a div tag with a class attribute of toggle button. Inside, let's add an image tag for the image icon, and this one points to /images/icon menu.svg. The alt can be, say, menu. The image will be changed in JavaScript. That's done for the header section, so let's work on the next section. Below the header tag, let's add a main tag with a class name of showcase. This main tag will contain two child elements, one for the images and the text below, and other for this article section. For the first section, let's add a section tag with a class attribute of showcase caption. In this section, let's add a div element with a class attribute of showcase img, that's showcase image, to wrap our image. And inside, let's add our image tag with source pointing to /images/imageweb3desktop.jpg. The alt attribute will be showcase banner. Outside the div element but inside the section element, let's add the h1 tag, and the text will be the bright future of Web 3.0. For this section here, I'm going to wrap this paragraph and button in a div tag to make it easy for styling in CSS. So let's add a div tag. Inside, add a p tag with text of, allow me to copy and paste, and a button with text of readme. That's all for the first section. Now, for the second section with these articles, let's add the aside tag with the h1 tag, and text will be news. Again, I'm going to wrap all these articles in one container. So you can use the div tag or the section tag. Let's add a section tag, and inside, let's add a div tag with a class name of news card. Inside the news card, let's add the h1 tag, and the text here is hydrogen vs electric cars. And a p tag with text of will hydrogen fueled cars ever catch up to EVs? That's for the first article. And if you observe this mockup design, we have this horizontal line above and below the second news card. So let's add the HR tag, the horizontal row tag below the news tag. Copy and paste the news card section and rename. The main section is out of the way, so let's work on the bottom section of the page. So let's add a footer tag with a class name of footer, and you don't have to use the footer tag here. You can use a div or section tag here. It's just HTML5 semantics. So inside the footer tag, let's add 3 div tags for these 3 articles here. A div tag with a class attribute of article. If you are wondering how I am auto-generating this div with a class name, just type in dot and a class name like article and hit the tab or enter key on your keyboard. So for each article, I will add 2 div tags. One to wrap the image and the other to wrap the text content. So first div with the image tag pointing to /images/image retro pcs.jpg. The next div tag with a h3 tag of 01 and h4 tag of reviving retro CPUs and a p tag with this. So let me duplicate it 3 times and change its content. Okay, now that's the page mockup, and let's preview and start adding styles to the page. So before we start adding styles to the page, let's head to the top of the page. Within the head tag, let's link our styles.css. If you've noticed, I'm always starting my file path URL with a dot. This is something I am used to, and you should. And without this, GitHub or some other platforms may not be able to locate file in your project. So with that done, let's head to our styles.css file. Before anything, I want to set the default for all elements in the page. So let's add This resets all browser default margin and padding to 0 and also sets box sizing to border box. Setting box sizing to border box allows us to include the elements padding and border values with the height and width of the elements when assigning height and width values, if that makes sense. So next, since we want to load the fonts from a file, we use the @font face rule. In our font folder, we have 3 font files. All are the same font type, but we have the bold, regular, extra bold version of the same font. Loading fonts in CSS goes like this. So the font family has the text of inner, or the name rather. The source attribute points to where we have the file in the project, and I am loading the interregular.ttf file. The font weight is 400 and font style is normal. If you have different font styles like italic, you can load them separately and change the font style to match that. So that's it for the first fonts. Let's load the rest. That's the extra bold and the bold. Now back in our README file, we have different color codes which are used in different sections of the page. One way to organize things in CSS is to store these color codes in a variable. So you don't have to always copy and paste the color code, and it makes it very easy to change colors whenever you want to. To achieve this, let's add the root CSS pseudo class. Inside the root class, we define our variables starting with 2 hyphens and the variable name. So for the first color, --sft-orange. Okay, so that's out of the way. If we preview our page right now, we see nothing much has changed. So let's target the body elements. So body, mean height is set to 100 VH, which is 100 viewport height. Overflow X hidden, font family, inter, sans serif, font weight 400, font size 0.95 rem, background color of off-white, color of dark grayish blue. The font family of inter is coming from the name of our custom fonts. Make sure the name matches properly, or else, it won't work. For the background color and color properties, we are using the colors stored in our variables. So we start with the var keyword and the name of the variable within brackets. The overflow X of hidden cuts off the image or any element when their width goes beyond the width of the screen. Try removing it and see what happens to the showcase image. For font size, I'm using a size of 0.95 rem, which is almost 16 pixels, and the rem unit makes the font sizing responsive when zooming in and out of the page. So always try to use rem or em units for your fonts and pixel values for padding and margins. So next is the wrapper class, and I added this class so that I can limit the width of the page. So if you are on a wide screen, the page won't stretch to fit that screen. For the wrapper class, let's add .wrapper min height inherit, and this would inherit the minimum height of the body, and max width of 1240 pixels. You can increase it if you want to. Margin of auto and padding of 10 pixels. The margin of auto places the page, the content in the center of the screen. For the header section, let's target the header class and display flex direction row, align item center, justify content, space between, height of 60 pixels. The display property of flex forces all child elements to flow towards a certain direction. So you don't have to use the float left or float right to move elements to the left or right side of the page. To learn more about the CSS Flexbox, please subscribe to my channel and don't forget to leave a comment. For the logo class inside the header section, let's add width of 60 pixels, height of 60 pixels, object fit contain, object position center. The object fit property of content scales the image to fit the width and height of 60 pixels. Next is the nav link section. The links are already in one line, that's horizontally, but I want to add a gap between them, and for the mobile view, the links actually flows vertically. With Flexbox, it's actually simple. All we have to do is target our nav tag with .header and nav and add display flex direction row, align item center, gap of 16 px. For the anchor tags in the nav tag, let's add header nav a, text decoration none, font family inherits, font text transform capitalize, color of inherit. And for the hover or focus states, since we are designing for desktop view first, let's hide our toggle button. Header.toggle button display set to none. Now let's preview and so for the showcase section, let's force the two elements to be in a row. So showcase, display flex direction row, align items, stretch, justify content, space between, gap of 1.5 em, margin bottom of 0 em. Now preview and okay. For the showcase caption section, we are going to use a 2x2 grid, and the image will take up the top section, and the h1 and the div tag will be placed in the lower section. So let's add showcase caption, display grid templates columns of 1fr, and gap of 1.5 em. The grid column templates of 1fr creates two imaginary boxes with equal widths, and since we have three child elements, the third one forces the grid to create another imaginary 2 box below, making it a 2x2 square grid. And gap just adds spacing between each cells. For the showcase image, we want it to take up the first two imaginary boxes. So we add showcase caption, showcase image, grid column, span 2, max width 300 px, width of 100%, and overflow of hidden. The grid column span of 2 forces the image to span or to cover the first two imaginary boxes, and overflow of hidden cuts off any image section that exceeds the height of 300 pixels or the width of the grid. For the image inside the showcase image class, let's add showcase caption, showcase img, and the image tag, width 100%, height of 100%, object fit cover, object position center. Let's preview and see what we have. For the H1 tag, let's add showcase caption H1, font size 0.3 rem, font weight 800, max width 300 pixels, line height of 0.96, and color of very dark blue. Font size of 3 rem equals 16 pixels times 3. Font weight of 800 uses the extra bold fonts which we've imported. And for the fonts, for the line heights, imagine writing on a plain A4 paper without a ruler or guide, right? The line height is the distance you leave between sentences before you start on the next line. Using margin and padding to space your paragraphs works differently when you space your text with line heights. Margin and padding affects the spacing between your text tags like your H1 and your P tag and other elements around it, while line height affects the height between each line of text. For the div tag in the showcase caption, let's add showcase caption div, then colon last child, display flex direction, colon, align item, flex start, justify content, space between, gap of 1 em, which is 16 pixels. Sweet flex box. Let's preview and okay, let's work on the right side in this showcase section. So let's add showcase aside, width 100%, max width of 310 pixels, background color of very dark blue, padding of 1.5 em, color of off-white, display flex direction, colon. Flex direction of colon flows element from top to bottom. For the H2 tag in the aside section or the aside tag, let's add dot showcase aside H2, font size of 1.8 rem, text transform of capitalized, color of soft orange. Preview and okay. After the H2 in the aside tag, the next is the section which wraps all our articles. So let's add dot showcase aside section, flex 1, gap 1.5 em, margin top of 1.5 em, display flex direction, colon, justify content, space between. And for each article, we can style all at once since they all have the same class name. So let's add new card, display flex direction, colon, align items, flex start, justify content, space evenly, gap of 0.5 em. Okay, let's preview and so down to the last section, the footer section. Let's add dot footer. Mean height is 100 px. Display grid templates, colons, 1fr. So this creates 3 imaginary boxes. Gap of 20 px. And for the article, let's add article, display flex direction row, align items, stretch, gap of 1.3 em, cursor of pointer. For the first div in the article class, let's add the greater than sign symbol only selects the direct child element from the article class. So if we had another div inside the div, this style won't apply to that last div. For the first child pseudo class selects only the first div tag it finds inside the article class. For the second div, which contains the text contents, let's add article The last child pseudo class selects only the last div tag inside the article class. So let's preview and in the next section, we will add styles for mobile view. Let's add the media query for the header section. Below the header nav selector, I will add at media, then brackets, max width 768px. Then inside, let's add dot header nav display none, position fixed, top 0, right 0, height of 100 VH, width of 75%, background color of off-white, padding of 18px, flex direction column, align item flex stats, and justify content center. Font size of 1.5 rem, font width of 700, gap of 1.3 em. Now header nav dot active, let's set that to display of flex. Now for this first section, we are setting the display of none. So which means that since when we are on a mobile, it won't show, but whenever we add the active class to the nav section, it should display the nav bar. And if you add the active class to the nav tag, you should see the nav bar visible on the screen. Also, let's display the nav button, the nav toggle button, since we are on a smaller screen. So below the header toggle button selector, let's add at media, max width 768, then inside header toggle button, display block, z index of 10. So this place it's on top of everything. For the showcase section, we want all the section and the aside tag to flow from top to bottom. So below the showcase class, let's add at media, max width of 768 pixels, showcase, flex direction, column, and gap of 3 em. For the showcase caption selector, let's add the display. Let's change the display from a grid system to a flex box. Below the showcase caption selector, let's add at media, max width 768px, showcase caption, display flex direction of colon. The showcase image on the mobile version is almost a perfect square. So let's mimic that in our code. Add @media max width 768px, then inside showcase caption and showcase img, aspect ratio 1. Aspect ratio of 1 forces the image to have equal width and height. For the H1 tag, let's add @media max width 768px, showcase caption H1, max width of 100%. For the aside tag, let's do the same. For the footer section, let's switch from grid column to grid rows. So @media max width of 768 pixels dot footer grid templates columns on set. So this would remove the 1FR, 1FR, 1FR we had earlier for the columns, and grid template rows is 1FR, 1FR, 1FR. So let's preview and see what we have. I'm using a browser extension called Mobile Simulator. You can install it on Chrome, Firefox, or Brave. You can also install the responsive viewer, or you can use the built-in simulator in your browser console. In our JavaScript file, let's get a reference to the toggle button class. So let's toggle equal document.querySelector, then within quotes dot toggle button, and the toggle icon, and also let's get a reference to the nav tag itself. To make the toggle button respond to click events, we need to add an event listener, and based on what event has happened, we can show or hide our navbar. So let's add this, and I will explain this later. So first, when we click on the button, right, we are checking if the nav tag already has a class of active, which we have in our CSS, right? So if we have the active class in our nav, we want to remove that class and change the image. So if we remove the class from the navbar section won't be visible. See,